Yes.
No, you want that.
Also?
Yep, whatever you're ready.
Alright, so push the button on there.
Yep, I got you. Alright,
Oh, okay. Alright then, welcome to Ride of the Valkyries, a guide to the Mecca of Macross. My name is Andrew, so the whole point of this panel is I'm going to bring you some real-life history of all the iconic variable fighters, or Valkyries, from the Macross franchise. And also relate them back to the real-life airplanes they are based on. Okay. So, first, an introduction. Who is this guy? My name is Andrew. I sometimes go by VF5SS. That's my Twitter handle right there. I write for CollectionDX.com. I've been doing so for about over 6 years now. I'm a lifelong Macross fan, having started way back with Clash of the Bionoids, which is the indomitable dub of the original Do You Remember Love movie. And I also do a Beach Show podcast and the Talk of DX Show podcast. And as a fan and toy collector, I have some Valkyries. How many? Couple. That's not even all of them, that's a sad thing. Okay, so I'd like to give a good shout out first to the Macross Speaker Podcast. These are 4 gentlemen who all live in Japan. There's Richard, Adrian, Gwen, and Renato. Renato especially because he translated a lot of information I'm going to be presenting here today. So there's their podcast, check it out. It's from guys who are in Japan, go to events, do reports, stuff like that. And they're all pretty fun people to listen to. So, and I just want to clarify, we're kind of doing mostly main character Valkyries only today. You know, I love to talk about the obscure stuff like the VF...
Like the Y1R.
Fine. But we're going to stick to all the main character stuff anyway. And also, no Destroids. Sorry, Destroids. Okay. So let's talk about the man behind the jets with honor. This is Shoji Kawamori, born in 1960. Looking pretty good for a man his age. Started off at the tender age of like 18 or so, working on a space battleship Yamato. He later went on to become a designer for Takara, who some of you may know have partnered a long time ago with Hasbro to make all the Transformers. Specifically, he worked on the toy line called Diaclone, which is where all the car Transformers and jets and stuff came from. So he took up some of that stuff. And later on, he also worked on a lot of other things, you know, like Gundam 3, the live-action movie Gunhead, and also the Armored Core series of video games. Probably one of his most notable achievements at a young age was directing Macross Do You Remember Love at age 24. I wish I could have done something like that at age 24. Okay. And he's the kind of guy who's been living the dream for a very long time, getting people to make all kinds of toys and merchandise out of the robots that he designs. So that's pretty fun for him. He can just kind of do what I could do right now. Anyway. So I want to introduce you guys to a couple of common aviation terms, just so we're all on the same page. If you know this stuff, great. If you don't, I'm here to help. So we're going to use an F-14 Tomcat, which looks a little bit familiar. Not only was it in the show Macross Zero, it was also the real-life airplane that the original VF1 Valkyrie is based on. So a couple of things you might want to know. Wings, very important. Wings have both ailerons that let you roll your airplane, and flaps that just kind of help you land a little bit better flights, slow speeds. Those are control surfaces, I should say. Things like the tail fins, you also have both vertical and horizontal tail fins. Vertical tail fins are for, you know, yawing like this, and horizontal tail fins are the elevators, are for pitching up and down. A lot of Valkyries don't have them, so it's kind of interesting when we get into why they don't. Just a couple other basic things. Fuselage is how you approach the body of an airplane. Nose cone, you know, just pointing into the front there. And the canopy just being the kind of glass thing that people see out. Pretty basic right there. Just a couple more things that might get brought up. Hardpoints and pylons. Hardpoints are just areas all around the airplane where weapons are mounted. Pylons just being things you hang off the wings to put bombs, missiles, guns, whatever, you know, what have you. Yes, you need that too. Another thing that you need to know is a restor hook. And that's a little thing that's dangling off the back of the airplane in that upper right picture right there. That's what helps you land in an aircraft carrier. We'll get into that in a little bit. Landing gear, pretty simple. All of the wheels that come out that let you land. And also another term that kind of gets brought up a lot, variable geometry wings. That's basically wings that can move, as you can see right there on that bottom left picture of an F-14. And the whole deal with variable geometry wings, or swing wings, is the idea that you get the best of both worlds in your airplane. Nice, straight, long, wide wings are good for low speeds. Wings that are swept back all the way and very narrow are good for high speeds, so you can do both things at once. Also, it's very toyetic, and it's really great for any kind of toy of a little airplane that you have. These wings can be just go like this all the time. And also another thing that we're going to talk about, this comes up a lot in mecha anime in general, the idea of vertical takeoff and landing for VTOL. It's just the idea of pointing a bunch of jets downward and taking off and landing like a helicopter. That right there is a Yak 141 doing it in a very haphazard way, a Russian airplane right there. That's a fairly recent example, but the technology to do so existed since 1955. So that's the X-13 Vertijet, which had to do that by landing a little hook on the trapeze there. And they were doing that before they had a lot of computers to control the stuff very well. So let's also talk about the original Valkyrie, the actual Valkyrie. This is the XB-70. This was an experimental high-speed bomber, very, very large. Had to fly very, very fast, about 3 times the speed of sound, or over 2,000 miles per hour. And this is the airplane that inspired Shoji Kawamori to kind of get into airplanes and all that kind of stuff. And it's kind of why all Valkyries are called Valkyries, because of this airplane right here. And unfortunately, it wasn't very good at dodging missiles, or F-104 starfighters for that matter. So it's not actually as nimble as other Valkyries are. Okay. And also, they like to have cameos of the XB-70 in Macross itself, with the scene from Remember Love right here. Just a little model on the desk there. So let's talk about before Macross. We have this project which is called Genocider. It's a very family-friendly name. So the guys at Studio Nue, Shoji Kawamori and his partner in crime, Kazutaka Miyatake, and some other guys, they're kind of known for doing the illustrations for Starship Troopers, the Japanese release of the novel. And they wanted to do the same kind of story with these transforming power suits called the flight suit, working in conjunction with a kind of birdwalker thing called a gearwalk, which is a term from Macross. Sponsor did not go for this show because it has no heroic designs, not like a Gundam, or even Doug or something like that. These are kind of very industrial, very military, not too flashy for the kids. And while they were shopping around this project, they tended to call it Project G, which stood for Gearwalk or We Walk. That's kind of where the pun with Gearwalk, the name, comes from. This is just a couple of the designs that they had used before. Gearwalk to Strover, that's my guess of what the hell that name was. I like the Morning Star there. That's amazing. And also the Aquarius, Aquarion, I don't know. So yeah, so those are kind of 2 designs there. One thing you can know is that on the left one there, it still has the gun as a nose cone, which is something that actually was still used in their next idea, which was called Battle City Mega Road. And this was supposed to be kind of a romantic comedy with robots and spaceships, sort of a parody of Gundam and Yamato. And one of the main mechas was called the Breast Fighter, which transformed into the Breast Soldier. The reason for this name is because it launched from the breast area of the giant Micro transforming spaceship that they had.
Sure it's not a reference to Mazinger Z?
No, it's they were pretty specific about it. It's because the boobies shoot airplanes that turn them red. So you kind of see this is where that familiar shape is starting to take shape as something you recognize. Still kind of kept the nose cone thing way back from the flight suit and the other Gearwalk. And that kind of leads into what we started to see next when we got the more finalized designs. This is around when we started to be called Macbeth. One person would call it that. They're like, no, you can't call it that. Just change one character to make it Macross. So that's how they changed that. So you kind of see this is more of the familiar shape, the more F-14 style airplane right there. That's kind of what he had done. He took his original design and he was you know, the F-14 has this big like channel underneath between the engines, and I can put the arms there instead of making the nose come to the airplane. And that's just kind of how his design process went along. And the only kind of major difference between this and the final design is it doesn't have this like backpack right here with the tail fins on it. That was his solution for hiding the arms from above. He's very much a stickler about like making sure this looked like a real airplane. So
I also have a fun trivia fact about the Valkyrie's backpack.
Yeah.
Anyone a Star Trek fan in here?
Yes.
Well, during the Next Generation, they used a lot when they were making the some of the filming models, and Captain Picard had the model of the USS Stargazer in his ready room. Well, one of the pieces on that model is the backpack of the VF1 Valkyrie.
Yeah, it's from an old model kit. And also somebody died from having...
Rachel Garrett from yesterday's Enterprise dies from a Valkyrie wing in her neck.
Yeah.
Or forehead or something.
Yeah, that kind of thing. All right. So this all kind of brings us to the first Valkyrie. Not that one, not the VF0. You go away, Mr. Retcon. The VF1 Valkyrie. So here it is. A couple of screen caps from the show itself. So here it is in all of its three primary modes. You got fighter, airwalk, and battleroid. And this is kind of like one of the big things that set the Valkyrie apart from other things of that era, was having three modes that all did something very recognizable and all looked pretty distinctive. You know, you've got fighter to do airplane stuff, airwalk mode was like to hover around and do helicopter stuff, and battleroid mode was for all cool giant robot stuff. If we can compare it with a couple of other robots, this is Dan Gardes, who's a big chunk of chunk. He's usually compared to Valkyrie just because he does in fact turn into a flying brick. Yeah, but that's supposed to be kind of an airplane thing. There's a lot of like cheating in the way this thing transforms. Things kind of grow and shrink and just disappear. And stuff like comes apart and combines. You need to take parts off of it to make it work. Even this modern toy had problems doing all that stuff. And also another contemporary of Macross at the time was Zabungle from the show Combat Mecha Zabungle. So, you know, again, typical heroic kind of robot design there. Does transform into a pair of flying robot parts. So this was sort of like the big change that Macross brought to the world of robot design. It was trying to make something kind of more recognizable and not having things that were just like kind of worked as, you know, a toy but didn't really work all the way. There's a lot of cheating in this design too. Which brings me to kind of like the major breakthrough with Macross, which was the idea of perfect transformation, or Kanzenhenge as they call it. The idea is that everything you need to make this thing transform is literally just a part of the toy.
I think he can do this with his eyes closed.
Yeah, well, there are people who can do other things. So yeah, this is we'll get to what this guy is a little bit. You can kind of see here. Basically, you do not need landing gear. You don't need to pull parts off, your fists, or anything like that. This thing. There we go. There's that. And again, the whole idea of having an airplane or a robot with three distinctive forms. A lot of them, again, you saw they kind of had other forms that didn't really look like anything, but that was where Macross broke through. And if you kind of watch here, sorry. Anyway, so this is Garowalk mode. You kind of see this kind of the bird walker thing there. The way they actually put this in the show wasn't part of it originally. They were kind of playing around with a prototype for one of the toys. Because Kawamori, he actually had a wooden model of a Valkyrie that he would show to sponsors. And this was great for them because they could just like turn out a prototype in about 80 days. It was pretty fast back then. And when playing around the prototype of the toy, they figured it's like, oh wait, the legs are swinging forward like this. That's that airwalk thing we were working on before, wasn't it? So they're just like, oh, we can just put this back in the new show. And so that's kind of how Gearwalk came to be. And that's sort of why a lot of stories, like backstories, say it's like, oh, it was an accident, because it was kind of an accident in real life too. And just kind of to show you here, this is the simple but pretty dynamic transformation. I mean, again, it's not a whole lot going on there. Airplane's bending in half, but it accomplishes a lot. Just sort of like the beauty of the design and how just kind of simple and effective it is. And if you kind of look at it in kind of step by step, it's kind of very nice and dynamic. Everything sort of flows together, coming forward. Everything uses smooth arcs, which allows a lot of the animators working on Macross to do some incredible action scenes with this thing. You couldn't really do that with other robots before then because a lot of combining a lot of stuff coming off, going somewhere else.
5-minute combination sequences.
A lot of padding episodes with stock footage. Hey, Macross. Anyway, but yeah, that was the cool thing about the VF1 Valkyrie. And although kind of a funny thing about it, this design that kind of changed the face of a giant robot. It has this one like weird Achilles hip, I like to call it, where like on this toy here, you can kind of see, there's like these bars that move the legs down for the transformation. But on the actual design, there's these like weird ass panels that somehow transfer the legs down to the nose cone in a fraction of a second, and it works every time. And they've never done this on a toy or a model kit until recently. It's coming out next month, so 30 years, finally got it right. Anyway, yeah. So let's talk a little bit about merchandise. So the original sponsor for Macross was called Takatoku Toys, and they weren't really on board with the whole idea at first. They thought the Macross was the main mecca, because they're like, well, that's the name of the show, right? Not this thing. But all the young guys at the company were like, oh no, this thing. You want to make toys of this thing, not
That's kind of one of the things that made Macross different too. It's just the only show where like the main mecca wasn't the title mecca.
That's true. Although it's kind of takes place around the Macross. But yeah. So this guy is actually one of those things there. This is their old 1/55th scale perfect transformation Valkyries toy, and they sold a lot of these. Over 1 million of these were sold eventually. And one kind of cool thing about them and any Valkyrie is that they usually just change the head and the paint job into a whole new toy. So this is pretty good for the model kit makers, the toy makers who just make tons and tons of new toys.
It also saved them animation money.
Yeah, that's true. Unfortunately, the company that did make these things went out of business because they didn't make a lot of money off each of these toys, no matter how many they sold, and also lost a lot of money on follow-up projects like Orgus and Dorvac. So eventually what happened is they sold them off to a company called Bandai. You've heard of Bandai. And another company called Hasbro said, it's like, hey, we want toys for our Transformers line. Can you help us out here? And so Adventures in 80s Licensing, the Valkyries showed up right here in the Transformers line as Jetfire, and even got to be a Valkyrie in the commercial for this toy. In the show, he had to be changed into what they called Skyfire, although he was still Jetfire in the comics. A kind of different design. Not really because of anything to do with Robotech, but actually because they wanted to re-import that show back to Japan. And they couldn't as well have a Bandai toy in the show, mostly sponsored by Takara Toys. It's kind of common interest there. But still kind of a funny thing though. Yeah, they were in the UK comics, because nobody cared about the UK comics. But Tatsunoko, who kind of controls a lot of Macross outside of Japan, they did license this thing. This is fully licensed right here, which was kind of a bad thing for Harmony Gold because they couldn't use this toy in their own toy line. And it's like, oh, but this is the best toy. This is what everyone wants. We got screwed. Also, kind of another thing that happened with a lot of 80s licensing. Beware model kit companies trying to get rid of their stocks, because the poor fellows at FASA ended up using a lot of this stuff in Battletech and got sued for it because they didn't know they had no right to control any of this stuff here. But you can kind of say they just took it. That's an old kind of little model kit there. That's the box art. They started tracing stuff because Battletech did actually sell some of these model kits, but they didn't have any licensing for Tatsunoko, so it was all kind of very, very They do not have any licensing from Macross proper. Yeah, they only got it from the guys who sold the model kits. So a lot of people try to say, it's like, oh, they
Valkyrie knockoffs, especially in the 80s, are like really, really common.
Speaking of which, this is the infamous Space Gundam V Korean movie, which is also very clearly stars a a knockoff Valkyrie. It also had knockoff Valkyrie toys to go with it.
And it comes out of a statue like
writing. Yeah, because in Korea you could not import Japanese movies, so they would just make their own using Japanese stuff, because a lot of that stuff was getting outsourced to there anyway. But yeah. But getting back to the VF1 itself, I think one of the things that's kind of made it endure throughout the years is the fact, oh sorry, I forgot, I rearranged this like today. But there were a lot of imitators of Macross back then. You might recognize some of them, of course, as Skyfire, aka Jetfire right there. The Zeta Gundam, why is it transformed? Because of Macross. The Orgus from the Macross show follow-up, Orgus, obviously. Also things like the Legios from Ospida, the Auroran, and the Logan from Southern Cross. Again, some of the stuff was incorporated into Robotech, so that's kind of where some of the confusion comes from. These are just all things that you kind of wanted to cash in on Macross way back then, so that's kind of how it worked. All right, but I think where Macross kind of sets itself apart is the idea is that these things look real, like they look like real jets. Like this looks as natural as this. These are a bunch of F-14s from the VFA-3103 gun, which are like Roger's Squadron, which is where the famous kind of Skull One Valkyrie, Roy Foker's Valkyrie, is actually based off of this thing right there. So again, you can see it looks pretty legit when they're flying through the air. And also the thing with, because Kawamori is kind of an airplane nut, he likes to put all these details into the design. Like I was talking about before, things like, you know, the flaps, the ailerons, and the wings. There's an air brake in the upper left that's relatively slowed down in the air. Little details for like how the tail fins fold, like the actual mechanical stuff in there, is in fact all based off of real airplanes. You know, you have an F-15 with its air brake up there, and an F-14 showing its arrestor hook and all that stuff. And then, you know, the wing of an F-4 showing a little tiny ring thing in there that actually locks the wing in place. And also getting back to the idea of an arrestor hook, this is how you land in an aircraft carrier. An airplane will trail behind this big hook is trying to catch one of 4 wires coming across the deck of an aircraft carrier. And they do kind of do this in Macross for like one time, because they kind of realized a funny thing about the Valkyrie. It's like it does have, you know, the hooks to catch the wire, but the way it's designed actually has 2 hooks, which is really, really bad, because if you only caught one hook, you would jackknife so hard to one side, it would probably ruin your day. However, being very adaptable, they could probably just, you know, do this, and it would work pretty well. Nice catch there. And also, who needs landing gear in Macross anyway? You can do that. They're fine. They are fine. All right. So here's a thing you probably hear thrown around a lot. The idea of a gun pod. Like, why are there guns called gun pods? Well, because in real life we have gun pods. The whole thing is it's a self-contained rotary cannon of some kind, just usually put underneath an airplane right underneath, gives them extra firepower. Valkyries use their gun pods as their handheld weapon or as their big cannon in fighter mode. So that's the whole idea. Again, it's got the take a look there, so it's all good. And as we kind of get into more of like a little bit of the design and merchandising, Kawamori kept like playing around with the toys, and he used just like cardboard, foam board to make what he called armor, to make a full armor of Valkyrie. He played dress up in a manly way. And this was a kind of a cool idea because it allowed Takatoku Toys to just make armor for all of their existing toys. And they can be like, hey kids, you can power up your robot right now, just buy the armor. And it's one of those things that's kind of kept persisting in Macross. It's in Macross 7, it's in Macross Frontier, Macross Zero. You know, it's just one of those things that just stayed with the franchise as part of the kind of iconic look of just beefing up your robot with armor. And kind of leads me to another kind of idea that they adapted or helped augment the toy, was the idea of what they call fast packs, making them kind of faster. It stands for Fuel and Sensor Tactical. It's basically like a big old saddlebag you put on the side of your airplane. The original plane to have it was the later models of the F-15 Eagle. And these things just have a whole bunch of hard points on them for mounting the extra pylons. They contain a lot of fuel. Sometimes they have sensors on them, but that's kind of where the whole name comes from. And they kind of did the same thing in Macross, just putting big fuel tanks, big conformal packs all around them, extra rocket boosters, all that kind of stuff with more weapons. And when the Valkyrie has like one thing with a big gun on the back, it's called a Strike Valkyrie, which is actually named for the Strike Eagle right there. It's an F-15E Strike Eagle. So that's kind of a little connection there. And also you kind of have the idea of what they call aerial early warning and control. What these are big airplanes that fly around with a huge disc-shaped radar, which allows them to kind of find out where enemies are, find out where their friends are, and get everybody on the same page. And it's also an idea that made its way into Macross. It very briefly at first, but then it kind of kept going and going. That's a VE1 inland seeker, has less than 10 seconds of screen time. In the Macross movie, they totally made a toy of it though. So it's the very same idea. They just kind of put the whole fastback idea, just gave it the big radar on the top. And again, it just persisted in Macross. You can see it's shows up in Frontier and also Macross 7 at the bottom
it's
there.
It's pretty ridiculous in the Stealth Valkyrie though.
Yeah, they only use that for like one episode, so it's okay. You can buy them all good at that though. And kind of moving on there, we have the second Valkyrie ever designed. This is the VF4 Lightning. This is a design that almost spanned a decade because it only showed up very briefly in the music video compilation Macross Flashback 2012, where it's on screen for less than 10 seconds, doesn't transform, and nobody knew what it was supposed to look like, when it transformed, because it's actually a very clean design. It's kind of ridiculous how streamlined it is from the underside. Yeah, so clean you can eat off of it. And the reason for this is because it's actually based off of the real-life SR-71 Blackbird, which originally started out as being going to be a high-speed interceptor called the YF-12. Kind of see the same idea, 2 inches off of the cells, the kind of tail fins canting inward, all that kind of stuff. And and also did show up a little bit in the TV series as a model that Picard was playing around with there. That's the prototype VF4. And I bring this up because Kawamori had actually went as far as designing a gearwalk mode for the VF4. This is as far as he got, just kind of sketches and a colored illustration of it there. Like fans of the newer series might actually recognize the fact that it has a pop-up turret in the back, kind of like the YF-29 from the second Frontier movie. So that's kind of a neat idea that he kind of stuck with it. But he had left Macross alone for a while. And when they were making a lot of stuff without him, for this video game called Eternal Love Song, which is a strategy game, I didn't even play it, they tried to make a battery mode for the VF4. And this, you can kind of see it's there. It's basically just a VF1E looking battery mode, kind of like this thing here. But what eventually happened is Kawamori returned to finish the design, almost 10 years later in 1995. And what he ended up getting was something that really kind of got its fame in video games. It's actually one of the selling points for the game, Macross Digital Mission VFX. It's the poster on the left there. For it. You can kind of see it's like front and center. It's like, hey, buy the game. You can see this thing transform finally, all you Macross fans. And there's also the PSP games and like the Dreamcast game, the PS2 game, lots of Macross video games. And recently it actually was made into a toy, and those are mine right there, by Yamato Toys. And it's kind of crazy because this thing actually works. It actually can do that transformation. It looks almost seamless from the underside. And the way it kind of works is that there's a lot of hidden joints and limbs hidden in the cross-section of the fighter boat. It's kind of cool. And then the whole thing just kind of folds and pancakes on itself to make that whole robot mode. So
Yamato's designers are insane. Their stuff is amazing.
yeah, they got some good. No, this one was made to order.
I know.
So
I know.
you had to go get it.
It's so sad.
You had to get it when it came out. All right, so we're going to talk a little about the non-Valkyries. Well, okay, there's basically 3 Valkyries. They all look like VF1s from Macross 2. There's the VF5SS, which is the thing. There's VF2J Icarus, which is also a thing, and the Metal Siren, which is also another thing. So all 3 of these, they're all just kind of variations on the VF1 design. They don't really have any kind of things that tie them back to real-world airplanes, so they're kind of not as interesting in that regard. But yeah, we're going to move back to Kawamori's return to Macross, and it still looks pretty not too different than he does now. So kind of going off the idea of him making like wooden models of these things, he actually started using Lego to design his Valkyries. In his hands right there is a Lego version of the VF-17 Nightmare from Macross 7. You can kind of see he's got sketches in the background and one of these toys there too. And if we enhance, I'm pretty sure that's his VF19 right there, made out of Lego. Sadly, he did not document this stuff back then, back in 1994. But as we go on, we get to Macross plus 7 equals awesome. The tandem projects, Macross Plus and Macross 7, came out at the same time as episodes of Macross 7 would come out, episodes of Macross Plus would get released. And we have the two main kind of hero robots from those series. The YF19 Alpha 1 prototype for the VF19, seen here as the VF19 Kai Faya Valkyrie. Hey, Basser. Thank you. Yeah, and when they say like something is like a YF, like YF15, YF19, that usually means prototype. So again, kind of a throwback to real airplanes right there. So one of the things about the VF19, I'm just going to call it that, they'll help expand the designs, is they have what are called forward swept wings like this. So it's sort of kind of weird. Why would you actually point the wings that way? And it is based off of a real world airplane, the X-29, which was made in 1984. This was an experiment to basically create wings that would funnel air over, basically, towards the fuselage of the airplane. And because of this, it actually means that these things are very, very maneuverable. Unfortunately, they're also very unstable. You need a lot of computer control to make sure they don't like spin out of control, even in a lot of flights. Also, other weird things like their wings warp a little bit when they maneuver. But kind of the idea is, it actually has been used. It's used again with the Sukhoi Su-47 Berkut, made in 1997, which Cowboy Jokes is actually based off of the VF19. Kind of a bit of life imitating art. But yeah. And also another kind of idea that started to creep into Macross was the idea of internal weapons bays, where both the VF19 or YF19 and VF19 have like missile launchers in their legs, which was kind of part of the fuselage fighter mode. And the reason for this is when you mount like weapons on hard points and stuff, that makes you less stealthy. You want to have as many few curves, like as many things sticking out of you as possible. So the way they did it was basically going back to like old bombers and stuff and said, well, just put the weapons on the inside. And that's what the Valkyries are doing, putting the weapons on the inside. And that's the F-35 right there, the new Joint Strike Fighter. And also, this is something that's kind of implied with the original Macross, the idea of thrust vectoring. This is two-dimensional thrust vectoring. The idea, kind of similar to VTOL, using the thrust from the back of the airplane, which it's the feet of the robot, to basically let you maneuver even more. So you can put both feet up like this, you can pitch down faster, pitch up faster, put them like this, you can roll faster. And it's kind of cool. They didn't start showing it until Macross Plus and Macross 7. When the video games, they could show them all the different Valkyries, so it's kind of cool. And this is kind of an example in real life. You have 22 Raptor showing the big vanes that move the thrust up and down. They can also open up, they will slow down a little bit. Kind of cool thing about the VF19 design.
Scale?
Yes, those are the same scale. Is that there's kind of an idea of familiar progress. It looks kind of like the VF, but it's not the same. Some of the details are repeated. It's a lot bigger, which means it's obviously better because it's the same scale, by the way. But also kind of a nice little throwback to the old design for the VF1, where it didn't have a backpack, so the tail fins and the legs. Cowboy decided, it's like, well, how do I cover up the arms from above when I don't have a backpack? So he came up with the idea of just having a shield that goes in between the arms. So that's kind of why modern Valkyries have shields. And also kind of this is a cool thing about the VF19. They have eyes, which is a nice link between both Macross Plus and Macross 7. Only the Fire Valkyrie has pretty beautiful lips, though. Also, the VF19 design is also a very good example of that one Kawamori design. Like, he uses this a lot. You kind of see how it gets changed over the years with things like the Nervash Type 0 from Eureka 7, or the White Glen from Armored Core 4 Answer. That same idea, the pointy feet. He likes hip thingies, things that hang off hips. I call them hip thingies. Like the kind of pointed monoboob thing going on there. The VF19 has a lot of that monoboob going on there. Big wide shoulders, lots of kind of stuff like that. So has a nice little thing there. And because it's sort of like a clean, sturdy robot design, people didn't really know how this thing transformed. It's very nice, very compact in its battery mode. And the best way I can kind of describe it, oh, sorry, yeah, another picture of that. So you can see, you can't really tell how it transforms when you're looking at it. The best way I can describe it though, it's like, it's exploding in flights, if you can kind of get what's going on there. I have a picture that's sort of like the mid-transformation, where everything is basically just kind of coming apart. The main torso was actually in the rear of the airplane, along with the arms and all that stuff. And this is kind of a better shot of like what it looks like. With the nose kind of folding down, the whole spine in the air coming up back, and covering up the cockpit area, and all that kind of stuff. Also, for whatever reason, they have like a codpiece. You can kind of see the codpiece there, which makes you think like, wait, does the nose cone go there? No, it's actually the big boob in the chest there. The model boob. Not quite like Total Recall. Yeah. So in Macross 7, they kind of show it a little bit in better detail. You can kind of see how things are shifting. You know, the rear of the airplane is coming up over where it was and kind of going back to where it was right there.
In fact, the Kawamori designs the Valkyries for like always like one of the best parts of Macross. Because they'll have that great history in them.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
And it's just a great design because he never rehashes anything. You can always tell they're similar.
Yeah.
But they're not the same.
Yeah, I think that's a good point to it too.
It's an insane genius.
Yeah, I made AKB0048. We love him for that. So kind of going to the VF-19's rival in the show, the YF-21 Mega 1, which became the VF-22 Storm Mobile 2 in Macross 7. So this is kind of another like stealthy design, you know, a bit more conventional looking. And it's based off of the real-life YF-23 Black Widow 2. In fact, the whole plot of Macross Plus is based off of the fly-off that happened between this airplane and the prototype of the F-22. Is they're designed so that they have very few like harsh edges. It's a lot of organic curves, things that basically deflect or absorb a radar in a certain way. And so, kind of with this idea, you can see right there's a base streamlined design. And also, kind of one of the things that the YF-21 does, it has what is called three-dimensional vector thrust, having three little paddles on the back, which lets you kind of move the thrust in all directions. Kind of go even more crazy maneuvers. And that's based off of the real-life X-31 prototype. Or this is a demonstrator, not a prototype or anything. So yeah, same idea, just three little paddles in the back. And a cool thing about the design is actually made to fight like a girl. And by that I mean, it is actually a transforming version of the Quaid Row female power suits the Zentradi used. You probably saw this in like the original series or the movie. You kind of see that similar profile there, very leggy and all that. They got the arm gun thing going on, the arm is strong on there. I just want to point that out. And also lots and lots of missiles. That's kind of the whole idea, internal missile launchers. And I have to keep that. I've watched it launch 13 times. Yeah, anyway. Now, think about the design, kind of going back to the thing it's based off of. It's very streamlined. It's kind of hard to tell how this thing transforms. They don't really show it that much in the series either. Like, this is the clearest I could find between Macross Plus and Macross 7. Kind of hard to see what's going on there, but what we're going to do, we're going to remove the pesky backpack. Watch out for those Evangelions there. I'll just steal the stuff I close off the back there. So we got a naked Valkyrie, 18 plus panel. So you can kind of see, like, most of that fighter mode is just that backpack the thing has. And in the fighter mode, all it basically does is kind of fold up. It puts the arms and the legs way back like that. And those panels that are on the legs, you kind of see them there, make the bottom of the airplane, and then that backpack just kind of fills in everything else. So not as complex as it looks. Fiddly as hell to transform that thing, but still kind of fun. Okay. Talking about the backup in black, the VF-17 Nightmare. So this is piloted by my man Ganlin. Kind of a big, black, very angular design, because it is actually based off of the F-117 Nighthawk from back in 1983. Some people call it a stealth fighter. It's actually really more of a bomber. This is kind of an earlier version of stealth, where instead of using very smooth organic curves, you used to use a lot of harsh angles that are made to reflect radar waves away from where they're coming from, so that people can't see you as well. You kind of see the same silhouette there between the two of them. And transformation-wise, it's fairly simple. It makes for one hell of a sturdy toy by the Bandai one, the old Bandai one. Basically, it's like all the stuff kind of swings forward. And sort of because of that, it makes it it's kind of standing up in flight, more or less. It's kind of how it transforms. Also, I like little sparks coming out of the hands. The toys don't do that, sadly. But it's a very sturdy, battle raid mode, and that's kind of the cool thing about the design. Very simple, yet it kind of makes this big, chunky robot that transforms. And as we kind of bridge the gap between Macross 7 and Macross Frontier, you have the VF17 Nightmare and the VF171 Nightmare Plus from Macross Frontier. It was the idea of, they wanted to have something from the original series, or from an older series in Macross Frontier. They couldn't make the VF19 the cannon fodder, because it's too heroic looking, so they went with this one instead. And it's kind of cool how the same design showed up again, a lot slimmer. It's looking at the same diamond shape going on there. And, but still, you know, it's a little bit slimmer, a little bit more leaner. That toy on the left there is a bitch to transform. That one on the right there is pretty fun to transform. But,
I actually owned the old Bandai version from the 90s. That was a pretty fun toy.
That's a great toy. That's a kid's toy, not a $200 adult toy.
Yeah. I got it for $15 at the flea market in its box.
That's pretty good. I hope you didn't get a bootleg.
No, it was real.
Okay. Anyway,
everything.
kind of the next thing there, we're getting to the dreaded retcon territory. So we're starting over with Zero, the VF0 from Macross 000. So what this kind of allowed them to do with this VF0 design was to start over again and make the jump to 3 dimensions without actually, you know, changing this guy, VF1. Because you can't actually, I mean, this thing is great, it looks great, but it's not quite perfect for making into a 3D model. So this let them kind of go from the ground up and kind of give that new look to it. And also, around this point, this is where Cowboy started actually showing more of his design process, like sketching, kind of refining, kind of see where we use different colors to show different parts of the transformation. And then it turns into a 3D model. So you kind of see the nice look there. And we talk about a thing called in-flight refueling. So this is a way that you can extend the range of an airplane already in flight. The VF0 being from a prequel, they tried to pass it off as like, well, this thing actually has conventional air-breathing engines, like a real jet. So it needs to be refueled a lot. And the way they do it is what they call the probe and drogue method. This is what is used by the Navy, most air forces around the world, except for the American US Air Force. They do not use this. And the basic idea is you have a long hose, then there's a drogue chute, like a big shuttlecock from badminton, and goes to a little probe on the front of the airplane. So it's, you know, it's basically like it goes like this. And it's kind of naughty. If you watch MST3K The Starfighter, you see a lot of it. Anyway, so yeah, this is kind of what it looks like, and you can sort of see where the detail in Macross comes from. And there's a shot from Macross 0, and also a shot from real life where one F-18 is refueling another one. That's kind of the advantage of the whole probe and drogue system, is that you can have any airplane refuel another one without needing some kind of specialized airplane like the other method is called the boom receptacle method. It's more like fitting a big straw into a little hole from one airplane to another. And also I like the fact that the VF0 finally has a proper arrestor hook on his back there, which hangs down in fighter mode. So he's very proud of that. So here's another idea where bigger wings are sometimes better. That's a VF0D, the D model. And the big difference between that and the original VF0 is it has a big, basically called delta wings. These allow you to fly a little longer, carry more weapons, might make it a little bit slower. But the idea actually does come from real life, where they tried to adapt an F-16 Fighting Falcon into a different airplane called the F-16XL, where they gave it large delta wings, again to increase weapons loadout, all that kind of stuff. So again, Cowboys like keeping abreast of all these trends in military aviation. There's also this idea, fastbacks is actually a very old term. It's no longer used anymore, even though it sometimes shows up in Macross. They're now called conformal fuel tanks, or CFTs. The idea being is that you just put a fuel tank, again as an F-16, that just conforms to the body of the airplane, like a big bulge you can kind of see on the side there. And again, the VF0 being a gas guzzler also has big old fuel tanks that go on its chest plate area right there. So that's kind of a cool thing. And also there's a very nice toy tribute, because you kind of saw before how the VF1 had those crazy ass panels. But the VF0 actually has just big old swing bars like this toy here. So that was kind of a nice nod to the toy that brought them lots of success. So we're going to talk about the SV51, the enemy Valkyrie from Macross 0. I don't know if it stands for Soviet Valkyrie 51, I just think that's a cool name for it. By the way, that says the last battle right there. So this is also where we kind of saw more of the design process, where he starts off with a Lego model. He takes high contrast photographs of it, and starts to sketch over it, basically trace over it, and then makes an actual design based off of that. That allows him to kind of make something that actually will work as a toy when he hands it off to designers and stuff like that. Now the S-51 is sort of like a new old bad guy because it's actually based off of a lot of Cold War era fighter jets from the Soviet Union. Specifically the Sukhoi family, like the Flanker, the Su-27, this is an Su-34 right there. You can kind of see they got that similar look to them. I don't know how well you can see it on the screen there. Things like parts of the arm are actually that big bulge inside there. Well, on that thing, that's where the landing gear are. But yeah, that's kind of how it goes there. And you can kind of see if I put two models next to each other. That's a Su-27 and a model of the Su-51. You can kind of see how they have that similar look to them. They're also very, very large airplanes, and because of that, the S-51 is also stupid huge. Like really. those are all things in the same scale, actually, so that's kind of good there. And the toy itself is also kind of gigantic. It's basically like a big pigeon. But yeah, so that's kind of the very bird-like gear walking it has right there. There's like a pound on the end of it. And the reason why it's sort of so big and why it kind of transforms the way it does is because it has to compress this entire nose cone. Otherwise, it would look like that. It's like, well, you know, people are like, it should transform like this. It's from the same era as this. It's like, yeah, but if it did, it would be like that. And that's stupid. So basically what it does is kind of like compresses the whole fuselage over a little bit. And also an important thing is folding the nose cone. Because it looks kind of silly when the nose cone is like that. We realized that a long time ago. But yeah, there's a lot of cool details with this design. It actually uses a very Russian way to achieve vertical takeoff. It's called lift jets. These are a bunch of dedicated jets that only point down, don't do anything else. These are the dead weight that allow them to do VTOL. And you can kind of see back there. It's hard to get pictures of this thing from the anime because it's moving so much. And this is based, I kind of saw before, the Yak 141. Yakovlev did a bunch of designs like this, where they had one main engine in the back and a couple of lift jets in the front. You can kind of see the whole configuration the same way. And so we're kind of moving to a new frontier. We've got the VF25 from Macross Frontier. This is sort of a way for them to kind of get forward, but also kind of get back to basics. And they also kind of show a bit more of his design process again. So here's the Lego model for the VF25. So it starts off, it's got a Lego model. Then he kind of models it up in CG, like he takes pictures of it, all that kind of stuff, starts to get the design, turns it back into a 3D model to kind of get the whole design refined even more. You can kind of see there actually that's one half Lego, one half actual model. So you can kind of show off how the whole design works there. And this is how it appeared. The VF25 first appeared in a lot of promotional material. You can kind of see, it does look like it does in the final show. It actually has a different kind of blue and white paint scheme. That's how it showed up in the trailer. If anybody remembers the trailer version from way back when Frontier was announced. So they actually used that same scene but changed it with the armored Valkyrie. So yeah, that's the final design right there. Kind of what we all come to know and love. Kind of a cool thing about the design is it has a lot of homages to earlier Valkyries, just kind of different things like the chest is like the VF-17, legs are kind of like the VF-14, which barely anybody knows about. Again, other things like the VF5SS and all that kind of stuff, and that's sort of like the idea of building on the things you've already done. But design-wise, it wasn't quite as gimmicky as like the VF-19 or the VF-22. They kind of got back to basics there. And some people like the homages they do in Frontier, some people don't. I like the homages. So one of the things that they did was get back to the whole fast packs and super pack thing. Basically allowing you to dress it up. And the VF-25 was kind of notable because it was the first design that could still transform with a full armor pack. And that's all the crap you can get from one toy. It's a lot of stuff. But surprisingly enough, though, it still stands, even with that huge-ass backpack from the armor pack. You might have to strengthen those hips, but it can still stand anyway. So the transformation is pretty simple, actually. Basically, the way it works is kind of like the VF-19, like the whole rear of the airplane comes up and becomes the torso, with the nose cone basically flipping around on these two big prongs coming off, and then just kind of resting underneath the chest plate there. And on the toy, you probably shouldn't hold the toy like this. This is just sort of how it works, where it's kind of unfurled in like a mid-transformation. So yeah, that's kind of how it works. Also, kind of a thing that some people like about Frontier, some people don't, is the fact that the design for the VF25 was kind of recycled for both the VF27 Lucifer and the YF29 Durandal. There's an in-universe reason for that, but you know, it's really great for your 3D modelers because they can just kind of like, oh, we can use the same bone structure from the other model, even when we have to change the whole thing.
It's for rigging.
Yeah, the rigging. Thank you.
I'm security.
All right. Yeah. Thank you. Yeah. It also kind of gives a nice bit of trivia about every Valkyrie that has forward swept wings. They all have a designation that ends in 9. They're all named after swords. You have the VF9 Cutlass, which is in a video game, in a manga, but Kawamura really likes that design, so that's why I showed up a bunch. Of course, the VF19 and also the Durandal, so it's kind of a nice little nod to history there. This is kind of where we start bringing it to a close here. So this is the YF30 Kronos from the new video game Macross 30. And there it is with this huge-ass egg carton weapon container back right on the top of the battle ring mode there. I have the game, I beat the game. I couldn't get any footage of it, unfortunately, unless you guys want screenshots of my TV. But yeah, so this design is kind of looks like the VF25, but it's actually based off of the Sukhoi Pakfa. This is a experimental design. You can kind of see they have that very similar look to them, but also that very like wide area in the back. That's on the YF30 becomes the big weapon container on the back. And if you play the game, the character who designed it tells you how awesome and cool it is. And her name is Aisha, and she has pink hair. Has a pink robot too, pretty big. Anyway, so 30 years strong. That's been Macross, and yeah. So that's the inside cover for Macross 30. The actual cover for the game is a bunch of girls.
Unless you bought the special edition.
Unless you bought, yeah, I'm not going to pay $200. I paid $100 for the game already. I'm not going to pay $200 for all the other stuff. Yeah, so that's kind of it. Here's some resources for you on the web. You can go to Macross Mecha Manual if you want to look at cool line art and stuff.
Some of these websites have been around forever.
Yeah, macrossworld.com. I can't apologize for anything the denizens of the forum do. CollectionDX.com, that's my site, and if you guys want more postcards, I've got a couple up here. If you want to learn more about airplanes, this is a very good documentary series. It's available on YouTube, English dub, called Wings of Russia. The dub is very understandable, just sometimes his syntax is a little charming, because it's done by a native bilingual Russian and English speaker. It's all about the Russian Air Force and the kind of their rise and all the good parts, all the bad parts. But I love this series, which is great to watch. If you want more resources in print, there's the two main ones being the Shoji Kawamura Macross Design Works and the Kawamura Shoji Design Works. These are two different books. They have some things the same. The second book there actually has more Macro Zero stuff in it, and more like Aquarion and like Armored Core stuff in it. The other book there, that's all just Macross stuff, but doesn't have any like Zero stuff or Frontier stuff. If you're looking, also this is a good resource. Actually, a lot of this information came from this book here. Macross Age, this is the 130th issue of Figaro magazine. A lot of interviews, a lot of history of Macross is in that magazine. Of course, it's all in Japanese, which is why I have friends in Japan. And also, if you're looking for like modern stuff, like the Frontier stuff, just go to the Macross Chronicle. The only confusing thing is they've been issuing these, they're like little packets full of stuff you put inside a binder. But they're doing a reissue where they have new art in some issues, but old art in other issues. But just like, if you find an issue, you want to get it, just get it, because it has a lot of good artwork in it. And you put it in a binder. You don't actually have to buy a special binder for it either. They just want you to spend more money. Also, the boring tech books. So these are the Variable Fighter Master File books, and I have one of them right here. These are like crazy like diagrams and crazy stuff like that. There's actually 5 of them, but one is another VF1 book. I actually like the VF25 book because you can actually, if you do this, you can open Ranka. Because that's the other half of Macross. There's lots of cute girls who sing.
And Basra.
But yeah, it's so weird when they do the idol lineup and it's like girl, Basra, girl. Yeah. Anyway, and also just like artwork, these are by the very talented Hidetaka Tenjin, who is the mechanical artist on a lot of Macross stuff. He also does like background art. He has to do animations sometimes. It's kind of overworked. But these two books, Valkyries and Valkyries Second Sortie, you've probably seen a lot of this artwork being used as people's wallpaper on their computers a lot. Yeah, these are good
I
books.
think I actually have one of these pieces as far as my
And
wallpaper.
again, before I go, I just want to thank the Macross Speaker Podcast guys. They do funny things in Japan, especially Renato there. Try to surf in the hand of the life-size Valkyrie. So again, that's their podcast there. Go listen to it. And I'd also like to thank you, yes you, because these panels would happen without an audience like you. Yes, you. And please remember, take your seat. I can just push that button here. Thank you guys.